Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. After months of highlight reel goals, spectacular saves and plenty of controversy both on and off the ice, the 21-22 NHL season has come to an end. And while half of the league shall be hitting the golf course a lot earlier than they probably would have liked, you know what that means folks, it's playoff time baby! Since the 16 playoff teams have finally been revealed, and since the postseason literally starts tomorrow night, I want to take a closer look at every single playoff team and make a case for why each of them deserve to win this year's championship. After all, whether they have never won the cup, their drought has lasted several decades now, or they have managed to win it all in the last few seasons, I thought that it could be pretty fun to discuss why each playoff team deserves to lift the trophy this year. Are some teams more likely to win it than others? Of course they are. Does every team really deserve to win it? Probably not, but I want to try something different today and crack a few jokes while poking fun at your favourite teams. And since it's my channel, that's what we're gonna do. So in today's video, join me as we explore why each NHL playoff team deserves to win the 2022 Stanley Cup. Let's start from the bottom of the pile and work our way up to the very top. So first we have the Nashville Predators. Now the Predators finished second in the wildcard race in the Western Conference with a 45-30-7 record during the 21-22 NHL season to give them 97 points on the year. Nashville have never won the Stanley Cup in their franchise's history, but they did reach the finals in 2017, only to lose to the Pittsburgh Penguins. It's also worth mentioning that the Predators have made the playoffs 6 times in the last 7 seasons. No, the play-in round in the bubble doesn't count, but they have made it out of the first round just 3 times during that span, and they last did so in 2018. Now, whether or not you're a Nashville Predators fan, you can't deny that watching that team lift their very first Stanley Cup in franchise history would be a pretty special thing to witness, right? Now, if UC Saros can get healthy for the postseason and he's on his typical form in the crease, Matt Duchene and Ryan Johansson can continue their resurgent point production alongside high-scoring winger Philip Forsberg, and if Roman Josi can continue to dominate the blue line with his Norris-caliber play, then I think Nashville could turn some heads and surprise a few people during this postseason. That said, they do have to face the Colorado Avalanche in the first round, so I imagine that their postseason run won't last very long if the Avalanche have anything to say about it. Good luck, Predators fans, you're definitely going to need it. Next up, we have the Washington Capitals. Now, the Capitals finished with the second wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference, thanks to a 44-26-12 record to give them 100 points during the 21-22 season. On a side note, every single team from the Eastern Conference that made it to the playoffs had 100 points. That's the first time that's ever happened in NHL history. I think it's pretty clear that the East is kind of a bit more dominant than the West this year, don't you think? But anyway, the Capitals won their first and only Stanley Cup championship just a few years ago in 2018, and they have made the playoffs in each of the last 7 seasons, but it's important to mention that they haven't made it past the first round since their cup win 4 years ago. Now, why should the Capitals win the Stanley Cup this year? They may have won it in the last half a decade, sure, that's pretty impressive. But wouldn't it be great to see Alexander Ovechkin win another Stanley Cup? I stayed up till 5:30 in the morning watching Ovi win it that year, and it was well worth it. I didn't get much sleep that day, but it was well worth it. And not just him winning the cup, but seeing how crazy he partied with it afterwards in the days and weeks after their championship was a true sight to behold. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I want to see more clips of drunk Ovi. Seeing him laying in a fountain in Vegas with the cup straddled between his arms and him clearly unsure as to what time of day it is or what even day of the week it is, just made the offseason so much more entertaining. But that said, the Capitals have a pretty uphill battle to face as they are going up against the juggernaut Florida Panthers in the first round of the postseason. So it may take a miracle or two just for them to make it to the second round. Caps fans, I'd get on my knees if I were you because I'm going to start praying for you folks. Moving on, we have the Dallas Stars. Now, the Dallas Stars finished with the first wildcard spot in the Western Conference, thanks to a 46-30-6 record for 98 points during the 21-22 season. Now, the Stars haven't won a cup since 1999, so it's been quite a while, but they did make the finals in 2019, only to lose to the Tampa Bay Lightning in the playoff bubble. Now, why do they deserve to win it? Well, not only has it been 2 decades since they last touched the trophy, it would be pretty great to see Dallas finally go all the way after such a close shave a few years ago. I mean, come on guys, the Stars had to spend weeks in the bubble locked in their hotels during the height of the global pandemic, only for them to fall at the final hurdle. Haven't they suffered enough, guys? Do I think Dallas are actually going to win the cup this year? No, I don't. Does that mean that their chances of doing so have significantly improved because I just said that in a video that's going live to thousands of people? Absolutely. So there you go, Dallas Stars fans. Have fun reminding me of this moment in a couple of weeks or months' time when Dallas lift the cup. You can go, ha! Odd Man Rush was wrong. They won the cup. Feel free to make me look dumb. You're welcome, guys. Next up, we have the Boston Bruins. Now, the Boston Bruins finished with the first wildcard spot in the Eastern Conference, thanks to posting a 51-26-5 record for 107 points during the season. Now, Boston haven't won the cup since 2011. It's been 11 years since they last won the cup, but they did go to the finals in 2019. Only to lose to the St. Louis Blues. Boston have made the playoffs in each of the last 5 seasons though, but they've made it past the second round just once during that span. So whilst they're a regular attendance to the playoffs, they don't really go on deep playoff runs, especially since their finals appearance in 2019. Now, why did Boston deserve the Stanley Cup this year? Well, not only has it been over a decade, 11 years since Boston last won the cup, it would be pretty great to see Patrice Bergeron lead the Bruins to another championship and win the Stanley Cup as the captain of the Boston Bruins. And this could well be his last real opportunity to go all the way, embark on a deep postseason run, and potentially get his hands on the cup before his career comes to an end. Sure, there are many teams that are more deserving to win it than Boston, since they have won it before and they've won it over the last decade or so. Boston's always a team that you should never count them out in the postseason, even if they are facing the Carolina Hurricanes in the first round. After all, how many times have they proven people wrong over the last decade? Quite a few, I'm pretty sure. Moving on, we have the Los Angeles Kings. Now, the LA Kings finished 3rd place in the Pacific Division, thanks to their 44-27-11 record to give them 99 points during the 21-22 season. Now, obviously, the Los Angeles Kings won a pair of Stanley Cups in 2012 and 2014, but it's important to mention that they haven't made the playoffs since 2018. So whilst they had their little mini dynasty in the early to mid 2010s, for the last 4 years or so, they haven't even made it to the dance. So now, the LA Kings have reached the postseason just twice in 7 seasons since their second championship in 2014, but they haven't made it past the first round in either of those years. So whilst they may have made it a couple of times since their cup wins, they haven't actually gone on a deep postseason run. They haven't made it out of the first round. The Kings don't really deserve to win the cup this year. They're 3rd place in their division. They've won a couple of cups over the last few decades. They don't really deserve it. But that said, Dustin Brown, he's retiring at the end of this playoff run. The captain who led his team to both of their Stanley Cups in franchise history, what better way for him to call it a day than by going out on top and winning his 3rd championship? However, it's worth mentioning that Drew Doughty is shut down for the rest of the season due to an injury. Jonathan Quick, their netminder, isn't exactly in the prime years of his career anymore, and the Kings also have to face the Edmonton Oilers in the first round of the playoffs. So whilst it's certainly possible that they might upset their highest seeded opponents, it's unlikely that they go on a deep postseason run. I wouldn't be surprised if they had another first round exit, maybe a second round exit, who knows? After all, it's highly unlikely that the lower seed manages to go on a deep run and win the cup, right? Wait a minute. Next up, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, the Penguins finished 3rd place in the Metropolitan Division with a 46-25-11 record for 103 points during the 21-22 season. Now, the Penguins, they won back-to-back championships in 2016 and 2017, and they became the most recent team to do so since the 90s Detroit Red Wings. So, Pittsburgh have made the playoffs 13 times in the last 14 seasons, which is incredibly impressive, and that's not including the play-in round, of course. But they've made it past the first round just once in the 4 years since their most recent cup win. They haven't exactly been a legitimate contender during that span. Now, given that Pittsburgh have won 2 championships in the last 6 years, they don't really deserve it more than anyone else at this point, do they? That said, Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin and Chris Letang, they're all starting to reach the twilight years of their career, and it would be pretty cool to see that trio win their 4th championship together before they eventually decide to hang up their skates over the next few years. I mean, how often do we get to see players in the NHL win that many championships in this era of the sport, especially while playing for a single team during that entire span? However, I think it's fair to say that Pittsburgh have had their fun already, already, so it's time for them to give someone else a turn with the cup. After all, sharing is caring, right? Come on, Pittsburgh, do the right thing here. Moving on, we have the Edmonton Oilers. Now, the Oilers finished second place in the Pacific Division with a 49, 27 and 6 record, which gave them 104 points during the most recent season of play. Now, the last time the Oilers made the finals was in 2006, but they haven't won the cup since 1990 at the tail end of their 80s dynasty featuring Messier, Fuhr, Coffey, etc, etc. And I think it's fair to say that they haven't really been a consistent playoff contender for the last decade plus, you know? Now, the Oilers have made the playoffs twice in the last 5 years, not including the play-in round, of course, but they've made it past the first round just once during that span. Not only has it been 30 years since the Oilers last won the cup, if Edmonton can't find a way to get it done with two of the greatest players of this generation at the helm, then I've got to be honest here, guys, this team doesn't deserve any more success for many years to come. I mean, come on, guys. McDavid and Draisaitl are such talented hockey players and are so deserving of a deep playoff run that the entire organisation needs to figure out how to help them get there. That said, the Oilers roster looks better than it has for many years now and actually looked primed for a deep playoff run. Mike Smith has found his rhythm at the right time, and their two world beaters could easily steal a game or two if they really want to. So I expect that the Oilers will go on some kind of run this year, maybe the second round, maybe the conference finals, but anyway, let's just hope that this team finally lives up to its potential after several years of disappointment and it makes it deep into the playoffs. After all, there could be some pretty seismic changes within that organisation if they don't. Moving on, we have the New York Rangers. Now, the Rangers finished second place in the Metropolitan Division with a 52, 24 and 6 record to give them 110 points during the 21-22 season. Now, the Rangers last won the Stanley Cup in 1994. It's been almost 30 years since the Rangers won the Cup, and they haven't actually made the playoffs since 2017, so we're finally seeing the dividends of that rebuilding process come together, and the Rangers are back, and not just squeaking into the playoffs, they're in second place in the Metro, folks. They actually get home ice advantage in the first round. Not only did the Rangers last win the Cup nearly 30 years ago now, but they are the undisputed best team in the league. They should win the championship because they are wonderful, they're great, they're so talented, they're amazing, and I'm definitely not showing any bias whatsoever as a Rangers fan right now. No bias whatsoever. This is a completely objective, level-headed opinion. Now, in all seriousness though, New York have surprised a lot of people this year, and if Igor Shesterkin can keep up his Vezina level, potentially Hart level play, I don't see why this team shouldn't make the second round or even beyond, especially since they face an aging Pittsburgh team in round 1. However, I think it's highly unlikely that they go all the way this year, as their sizable amount of youth on the roster and their clear lack of playoff experience from the top of the roster down could eventually catch up to them when they face a more veteran, experienced team that's used to deep playoff runs, especially in that difficult Eastern Conference. But that said, if Shesterkin can keep up his incredible play of this season, the sky really is the limit for this team, and they could very well be a dark horse team over the coming weeks. We all know how vital a red-hot goaltender is to a team's playoff run, and a goaltender really standing on his head could make or break a playoff run for a team, so go and get the job done, New York Rangers. Just please let me see you lift the Stanley Cup before I die. I'm not getting any younger, you know. Moving on, we have the St. Louis Blues. Now, the Blues finished third place in the Central Division with a 49, 22 and 11 record for 109 points during the regular season. The Blues obviously won their first cup in franchise history just a few years ago in 2019 after entering the new year last place in the league standings. One of, if not the most incredible turnaround in NHL history, and they got their first cup out of it. Play Gloria, folks. Now, the Blues have made it to the playoffs in each of the last 3 seasons, but they failed to make it out of the first round every year since their cup win. So whilst they have returned to the dance and they're back to try and defend their title and regain it, they don't actually get very far, quite similar to the Pittsburgh Penguins and several of the other teams that we've looked at. But let's be honest here, folks. The St. Louis Blues don't really deserve to win the cup this year, do they? After all, they literally won it like 4 years ago. It's not like they have a 50-year drought to break anymore. That said, it would be pretty cool to see St. Louis go all the way once again and win their second cup in 4 years. But I don't expect them to do so given their heavy competition in the West. Sure, Pavel Buchnevich was a great pickup for them, Vladimir Tarasenko has had a resurgence resurgent season, and the team looks pretty strong on both sides of the puck, both offensively and defensively, but their goaltending situation gives me some cause for concern. And we all know that your goaltender can make or break a series, as I mentioned with the Rangers. They've got Jordan Binnington, they've got Ville Husso. Which one are they going to go with? Will it be the right decision? Do they go 1A, 1B? Do they go one clear starter? Do they go with the guy that won them the cup the first time? I don't know. So, will the St. Louis Blues bow out in the first round yet again? Well, considering they have to face the Minnesota Wild in the first round of the playoffs, it's certainly possible. Moving on, we have the defending Stanley Cup champions, the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, the Lightning finished third place in the Atlantic Division with a 51-23-8 record to give them 110 points during the 21-22 season. And as I mentioned, the Lightning are the defending Stanley Cup champions, having won back-to-back Stanley Cups, not just the most recent one, but back-to-back championships in 2020 and 2021. Now, if there's one team that really doesn't deserve to win the cup more than anyone else right now, it's the Tampa Bay Lightning, right guys? They have literally won the last two championships. Let somebody else have a chance. Stop being so greedy, Tampa. Now, while the vast majority of hockey fans, I'm sure, would like to see the defending champions fall before the final hurdle this year, there would be something pretty special in seeing Tampa complete the three-peat and become the first team to win 3 consecutive championships since the dynasties of the 1980s. After all, we would all get to witness the 2020's Tampa Bay Lightning cement their place as one of the best teams in the history of the NHL. I think you'd be lying if you said you weren't kind of excited for that outcome. Given that they have kept the core of their championship teams intact over the last few years, they have produced another strong regular season this year, and they seem to be going into the postseason relatively healthy, perhaps more so than years past. It really is Tampa's championship to lose. Do they deserve it? No, not really. But could they do it again? Absolutely. Next up, we have the Calgary Flames. Now, the Calgary Flames, I think, surprised a lot of people this season, as they finished first place in the Pacific Division with a 50-21-11 record to give them 111 points this season. Now, Calgary won their first and only Stanley Cup in 1989, and they last made it to the finals in 2004. That said, they have made the playoffs 3 times in the last 5 years, but they haven't made it past the first round in any of those seasons. So I think it's fair to say that Calgary have had some very disappointing postseason runs over the last half a decade. God, it would be really nice to see the Calgary Flames finally live up to their potential for once, wouldn't it? I mean, not only do they have the talent, the size, and the toughness to outmatch pretty much any opponent they face in a variety of ways, they also get some tremendous goaltending from Markstrom, and they have a cup-winning coach behind the bench in Daryl Sutter. So if you ask me, Calgary have as good of a chance as anybody in the Western Conference, but this franchise, as I said, has disappointed their fan base so many times over the last few seasons, so they need to stop talking the talk and start walking the walk. Are they deserving of winning the cup? Sure, but we'll believe it when we see it, Flames. Next up, we have everybody's favourite team to meme on, the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now, the Leafs finished second place in the Atlantic Division with a 54-21-7 record to give them 115 points during the 21-22 season. Now, as we all know by this point, the Leafs last won the Stanley Cup all the way back in 1967, and they haven't even made a Stanley Cup final since then either, so it's been a really long time since anybody in Toronto has even witnessed Stanley Cup finals hockey. It must really suck for them, right? They don't talk about it at all, do they? It's worth mentioning that the Leafs have made the playoffs 4 times in the last 5 years, not including the play-in round where they got embarrassed by the Columbus Blue Jackets, of course, but they haven't made it out of the first round in any of these years. So once again, they're really struggling to find postseason success. They've got some demons in their closet that they need to get rid of fast. Now, whether you like them or not, ladies and gentlemen, I think we can all agree that the Toronto Maple Leafs probably deserve to win the Stanley Cup more than any other team in this video. Are they the best team in the league this year? Probably not. Are they the most legitimate cup contender out of anybody? Chances are they're not. Is a large portion of their fan base insufferable to interact with? Oh, absolutely. But this team hasn't won a championship in half a century, ladies and gentlemen. Hasn't this fan base suffered enough? After all, the team hasn't even made it past the first round since 2004. We've got to let them have something at some point, right? Considering that most fans are more interested in making it to the second round instead of thinking about winning the Stanley Cup, I really do hope that this team is finally able to exercise their demons and prove all of their haters wrong after many years of upset. That said, I would be lying if I said it wouldn't be absolutely hilarious if the Maple Leafs lost in the first round yet again. I mean, seeing that fanbase implode on itself year after year sure is entertaining for the rest of us fans around the league, that's for sure. Moving on, we have the Minnesota Wild. Now, the Wild finished second place in the Central Division with a 53, 22 and 7 record, which was good enough for 113 points during the 21-22 season. It's worth mentioning that the Minnesota Wild have never won the Stanley Cup, and they've also never made it to the Stanley Cup Finals either, with the furthest they came was the Western Conference Finals in 2003. Now, Minnesota have made the playoffs twice in the last 4 seasons, but they haven't made it past the first round in either of those 2 years. So Minnesota, they're able to make it there relatively consistently, but they can't actually do anything once they get there. Now, other than the fact that it would be really cool to see Minnesota lift their first championship in franchise history and finally put themselves on the map as Stanley Cup champions, it would also be pretty cool to see Marc-Andre Fleury lift another Stanley Cup before his career is over. I mean, that guy is just so well loved around the league and he's faced so much adversity throughout his career that it really would be awesome to see him rewarded for his efforts and prove that he is still a championship caliber goaltender without the Penguins trio of Crosby, Malkin and Letang supporting him. That said, I don't think they're going to be able to win it this year. Could they go on a deep playoff run? Sure. Could they surprise a lot of people and turn a few heads? Absolutely. But their competition out west is just so tough this season that it's unlikely that they're going to come out on top and make it to the finals. At least in my opinion anyway. Next up we have the Carolina Hurricanes. Now the Hurricanes finished first place in the Metropolitan Division thanks to posting a 54, 20 and 8 record to give them 116 points during the regular season. Carolina of course won their first and only Stanley Cup in 2006 and they haven't been to the finals since, so they really did catch lightning in a bottle that year and ran with it, but they've been unable to replicate this success over the many years that have followed. Although it's worth mentioning that the Hurricanes have made the playoffs in each of the last 3 seasons, and they've made it out of the first round twice during that span. So whilst they may not have necessarily won the cup, they've been on a conference finals trip, a trip to the second round as well, so they do embark on some relatively deep postseason runs. Not only did Carolina win their cup 16 years ago now, the Hurricanes have been one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference for the last few seasons, after missing the playoffs for 9 years straight. And given their performance this season, along with the overwhelming talent they have on their roster, I expect that the Hurricanes will embark on another deep playoff run. That said, I do think they will be forced to repeat history once again as they fall at the final hurdle once more. After all, with Frederik Andersen on the sidelines for much of the first round due to injuries, I think it's going to be pretty difficult for their backup netminder to come in and get the job done if the rest of the roster doesn't give him the support he needs. That said, Carolina's backup is likely going to be Antti Ranta, who is an NHL caliber netminder still, so if he can get the job done and Carolina make it past the first round, I expect them to make some noise during the later rounds of the postseason. After all, given that they haven't won the cup in a decade and a half now, they're certainly more deserving than some teams and less deserving than others, that's for sure. Penultimately, we have the best team in the West, the Colorado Avalanche. Now, the Avalanche finished the season with a 56, 19 and 7 record to give them 119 points during the 21-22 season. The Avalanche last won the Stanley Cup in 2001, and they last made the Stanley Cup Finals that very same year too. Now, it's worth mentioning that the Avalanche have made the playoffs in each of the last 4 seasons, but they haven't made it past the second round in any of those years. So whilst they're able to punch their ticket to the postseason and book their trip to the dance, they don't exactly get very far once they get there, as they usually bow out within the first or second round. Since they've dominated their conference for most, if not the entire season this year, they haven't won the Stanley Cup for over 2 decades now, and they are one of the favourites to win the championship from the Western Conference. Why shouldn't the Colorado Avalanche win the cup this year? To be honest, Colorado stand as good of a chance as anybody if you ask me. After all, they have the superstar talent to get the job done, they have a plethora of depth options, and they have some pretty decent momentum this season. All they need to do now is put all of the pieces together at the right time, and they should produce a cup-winning postseason at best, and a pretty deep playoff run at worst. That said, you actually have to make it out of the second round if you want to win the cup, so you should make sure you reach the conference finals first before you even start thinking about winning the Stanley Cup, okay boys? I know it might be a little bit difficult given your past, but just get through that second round and then we'll talk, okay? And finally, last but by no means least, we have the Florida Panthers. Now, the Panthers finished first place in the Atlantic Division, and they clinched the President's Trophy as the best team during the regular season, thanks to them posting a 58-18-6 record, which was good enough for 122 points during the 21-22 NHL season. Now, it's worth mentioning that the Florida Panthers have never won the Stanley Cup in their franchise's history, and they last went to the finals in 1996. It was both the closest they have ever come and the most recent example of them coming pretty close. Interestingly, the Panthers have made the playoffs just once in the last 5 years, not including the play-in round of course, and they didn't make it past the first round that year either, as they lost to their Florida rivals Tampa Bay. Now, not only would it be great to see Florida reach the finals for the first time in like 25 years and finally lift their first championship in franchise history, Florida have been downright dominant this past season. Sure, they've struggled to be a consistent playoff team in years past, and when they've made it to the playoffs, they haven't really done very much, but given that they dominated the league for pretty much the entire season, they have a plethora of superstar talent up and down the lineup, and they are overflowing with depth options at pretty much every single position, I find it pretty hard to believe that Florida don't take the next step this year, and they cement their reputation as a legitimate cup contender in the playoffs. After all, this team has looked head and shoulders above its contemporaries pretty much all year long. Anything less than a conference finals appearance would be downright embarrassing. So, will the Florida Panthers finally get their hands on the cup and clinch the championship that their organisation so clearly deserves? I guess we'll have to wait and see, folks. And that was a look at why every NHL playoff team deserves to win the 2022 Stanley Cup. What do you guys think about the different playoff matchups that we're going to see this postseason? Do you think that one of the top seeds will lift the trophy once it's all said and done? Or do you think that an underdog side will clinch the championship instead? Also, if you're wondering who I think is going to win the Stanley Cup, I'll be honest with you folks, I have absolutely no idea whatsoever, and I have no intention of trying to figure it out, because let's be real here, the playoffs are incredibly unpredictable, and anything can happen once the puck is dropped. There's plenty of teams that deserve to win, there's plenty of teams that are good enough to win. I guess we'll have to see what happens once the puck is dropped and play finally begins. One last thing, what do you guys think about this style of video? Do you like this style with me sat in front of the webcam, a bit more of a informal chat, cracking jokes and a bit more lighthearted than my usual videos? Or would you prefer that I stick to my usual content? I'm kind of trying to experiment with a few different ideas here, and if you guys like this stuff then I'll keep doing it, but if you don't, I'll just stick to the stuff that I already do. But other than that, thank you very much for watching guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Clayton Hallam, Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, Raquel, and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further, and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.